I'm super excited that I am here today with one of the ladies in leadership from the Liberty Mutual team. We are going to be talking about the evolution of women in insurance and where we came from, where we're headed to, and then also some ways that we can keep creating change as this force of good in the industry. So welcome and thank you again so much for meeting with me today online.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got into the insurance industry?
Yeah, what a fun story, right? Everybody has their story about how they got into insurance. My name is Myrna Estrada. I'm a senior vice president for Liberty Mutual. I work in independent agent distribution for Liberty Mutual. And I started my career 41 years ago in the insurance industry. One of the things that I like to say is, the best job you have is the one you have right now. And that'll make a little sense as I tell this story. Um, I was working for a small software company right out of high school. I was going to school at night and pretty quickly found that software company sort of a little unstable, not sure if they were going to make it in a very fast evolving software development environment back then. Back then, looking at it in a newspaper, I thought, I need something a little bit more stable. And so I saw a role with an insurance company as an assistant in the department. I applied for that role and got that role back in 1984 and really was an assistant in the department, just sort of helping everyone. But interestingly enough, most departments were beginning to adopt personal computers and things of that nature. And the fact that I came from a software development company where I was really doing kind of clerical work and just kind of receptionist work. But interestingly enough, I was pretty comfortable around a computer. And so very quickly, I found myself adding value to that underwriting operation that I joined and just kind of continued to lead from that point forward. Ultimately, led a technology team that was helping agents interface with us and that type of thing. So that's how I got started and fell in love with the industry. Have been working with independent agents ever since, which goes back to 1984, and I've just cherished my career.
Well, it sounds like you're like many of us. We start somewhere and plug into the industry, and then we start, kind of growing and evolving and moving up the ladder, so to say. So, what do you think has been your contributing factor to that? How you kind of just progressively moved up?
I have to say, like, the number one thing I'm so grateful of is that I'm a very curious person. That curiosity has really created kind of a growth mindset that has, to me, been my secret sauce. I'm always trying to learn, always trying to get better. Even when I think of the work that we have done in women empowerment and helping agents kind of with their career paths and what they're actually trying to achieve in insurance, all of that has been a thing of curiosity, just like what can we do to bring people together and get better? And so for me, I feel like it has really been my secret sauce is just being able to be very curious, which leads to a growth mindset. Now, the real contributing factor, though, is you have to be in an environment that nurtures that, that also encourages and listens to leaders and to future leaders, right? And I've been blessed to have that as well. So the combination of those two things is, I think, what has led to my success.
That's so powerful. And, that's kind of what She Leads is about is, I tell the ladies every year and when we're on our mastermind calls that I can teach you all the different processes and have guests on talking about sales strategies and all of that kind of stuff. But it really boils down to your mindset and the people you surround yourself with and your environment. So I love that you talked about that being your secret sauce because I do. That's the one consistent thing, no matter how the industry shifts or changes. That's a one consistent thing that I feel like you can always rely on. So that's great confirmation. So thank you for sharing that piece. I would love to know, how have you seen the opportunities for women in the industry evolve over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think, there's times I get really encouraged and excited about the progress that's been made. Even in some of the work that we've done throughout the years, we've watched it go from what felt like just networking. And pretty quickly, we saw like super awesome coaching and mentoring that started happening, and women who wanted to acquire and be in partnership express an interest, and others kind of jump at their aid and be coaches and mentors. So, on the one hand, I've seen incredible progress. And then I'll attend events and we'll talk about experiences And I find people experiencing some of the same things that I experienced back in the 90s, right? So I think great progress, but still a lot of work to do. I think there's still a lot to do. And it kind of gets to what you were just saying a moment ago. It's one thing to have aspiration, to be prepared, to set myself up for success. But unless I have the coaches and the sponsors that are going to help me get there, you really kind of need that allyship. It's really what's going to get you to that next level. So great progress, but I still think more needs to happen in the way of mentorship and coaching and in the areas that are needed, right? So I find that there's general coaching and mentorship happening. For example, somebody who has, led within an agency for years, but maybe has not gotten to the next level. Well, is she getting the coaching and mentorship for that next level, like agency ownership? I find that women, maybe have an aspiration to lead and to own, but have they been given the financial acumen training that they need to understand it? Because then when it hits them, it's overwhelming because they've never really thought about, what it's going to take to finance an agency or to run the business, and how do I determine my return on my investment, and what does EBITDA look like for this agency? What does the valuation of the agency look like? All of these things. So parts of it they've had exposure to, but not all. So I think great progress, but I think we can do more to be very intentional about what is it that you need development on? How can I help you get what you need to get to that next level?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And, because I have a lot of conversations when we're speaking to females in the industry that, numbers feel scary to us, and we don't want to ask the wrong questions, or we don't want to feel like we're, maybe not as intelligent as the guy sitting next to us if we ask about ROI or acquisition costs, or just, any of that stuff kind of around our numbers and reporting and all of that. So have you seen that there's been a shift with that? Are women asking the harder questions now, or is that maybe an opportunity for growth?
I think there's still some opportunity, but I do think women are getting better at that, right? So if you look at the studies that ask, are you interested in leadership? Are you interested in ownership? Those numbers are increasing. So first and foremost, the acknowledgement is being made that yes, there is interest in that. Um, and I do think there's a lot of conversations now around coaching and development. I think the next step is intentionality. So let's get real intentional about what is it that you're after and making sure that we're asking the right questions. And I think women are starting to do that. And what's even more encouraging is we're starting to see allies and coaches also being able to understand that gap. And so they're also starting to ask that question. I'd love to give a really great example that we had recently. So I did a number of women's conferences, and invariably when I send a video out and I share the learnings of that conference, men usually say, I love this work. How can I get involved? How can I help? So last year we held something we called a legacy conference. Think of it sort of as an allyship, men as allies council. And so we had, men speaking to how they're encouraging and coaching women. And in that, at one point, one of our guests raised the question. He says, Myrna, I'd like to know why we're still struggling with female commercial lines producers. And I literally thought, oh, that's just a gap in your office. There's lots of, very strong, great women producers. And I had a lot of individuals in that meeting, and several spoke up and said, no, Myrna, this is a real gap. Like, I have 100 commercial lines producers, three of them are women. I had 50, one is a woman. And honestly, it was a wake up moment for me. Like, I didn't even know that was a big gap. And it led us to what's now going down this path of panel discussions and deep dives into why is this still a challenge today? I know plenty of amazing commercial lines female producers, but I probably know most of them, right? And so, how do we advance that so that more women can raise their hand and say, I want to learn how to be a commercial lines producer? And then we start troubleshooting why are they having such a tough success rate?
Yeah, yeah, such a great point. And I think a lot of it behind that is just the confidence to handle the commercial, and then also the bigger accounts. Just kind of like forging. It's just all around. It's just we need more women in leadership raising their hand, just like you were showing, raising their hand, saying, I'm going to figure it out. I got this, and going for commercial lines, bigger accounts, or whatever that looks like for them. So, such an important topic. I'd love to know, what does modern leadership in the insurance industry look like to you?
I love this question too. So, 5, 10 years ago, I started talking about women's conferences and allyship and support and mentorship and coaching, and the importance of a strong culture and the importance of listening and making sure that not only women, but everyone in your office is feeling heard. And I swear to you, the first couple of times I did that, Casey, I felt like I was getting crickets in the room. Like people were just looking at me like, oh, yeah, that's great, Myrna, but I don't really need to know that. I don't really need to have that in my very successful operation. And so that's how it felt in the beginning. The truth is, they were probably listening, but just didn't really know how they were plugging themselves into that work. I can tell you today, it is music to my ears when I speak to a very successful organization and they tell me about the importance that they are placing on culture, the importance that they are placing on making sure everyone in their office feels included and involved and is feeling heard. So I think we're making great progress there, both for women and for men and leaders starting to understand the importance of that. I mean, I have plenty of sales organizations, of very successful organizations that I work with that tell me it is first. First, what's our culture? Well, how do people feel? Are people feeling heard? Do people feel involved? Because I'm telling you what, you are going to get the best of me when I know that I'm being included. If I'm not being included, you are not going to get the best of me. And I think everybody's starting to realize that in order for you to even start having success, that foundation needs to be there. So from that aspect, I'm very encouraged. I'm very excited. Modern leadership looks like I know that first and foremost, culture. Do I have the right culture in order for us to succeed?
Oh, I love that. How are you seeing those culture shifts? What are some of the things they're doing to create that culture up? And I would assume, like, with the environment and the industry, it being, a little rocky at
Hmm.
times, and we go through
Hmm.
these, valleys and lulls. And so, how are they creating? What are some of the kind of strategies that they're doing to create that sense of stability and culture in their agencies?
I think one of the first ones is be transparent. Are you even asking what is our culture, right? I've encouraged many partners that I work with. Is the first thing I say is, do you even know? How often do you ask? Are you doing, these check-ins where you're making sure that you get the pulse of your team? So I think that's first and foremost, and then creating environments where people feel heard. I think that's a big one, especially for women. I'm going to go ahead and call that out since this is about She Leads. Like women, if they're not feeling heard, they are not going to give you what you need. And they have a lot to offer, but they won't give it if they don't feel heard. So I'm really encouraging that. I think the other is the coaching and mentorship. If nothing else happens, but you say, do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor? And for some people, that may be the first time anybody's even asked them that ever in their whole careers. And I think that is a great first start. And I think the other thing about that is people feel overwhelmed by that because they think it's like really complicated. It's not. Go out there and chat GPT this. You're going to find out really quick. You can find great, quick, easy first steps that you can take to start creating an environment where people feel like they're creating an avenue to talk and to bring their suggestions to the table. That is going to change everything. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing.
That's great. That's such great advice. And yeah, using chat to just this is the things that I'm already doing. I'd love to boost, the morale and a sense of culture in my agency. So what are some next steps? Absolutely love that. So let's kind of switch to, as we're closing and wrapping up, what advice would you give to a woman out there that's ready to take the next step in leadership, whether that's asking for a different position or becoming the agency owner and putting her name on the door? What are some first steps and advice that you'd offer?
I love this because I will be the first to admit the one advantage of a 41-year career is I've learned a lot through the process and I've learned my own mistakes, which the first thing I will say is I talk about the onlys a lot and it's the only woman, the youngest woman, whatever the situation is. And I, throughout the years, came to realize that a lot of those um, imposter syndrome things were my own. I owned them. So I think first and foremost, like a lot of the things that you feel that you're experiencing, yes, you may be external factors that are creating that, but some of it might be your own biases. So take a look inside, make sure that you're overcoming those biases and it's not what you think it is. Because what I have experienced is once I opened up and became more vulnerable and became more authentic about what I was feeling, I found there were so many people willing to come to my aid. So, first and foremost, address your own biases, make sure that some of that is not your own imposter syndrome that you're setting on yourself. Be courageous, take that first step. It's going to take a lot of courage to do that. Again, ChatGPT, there's a lot of cool ways to overcome that. But then I think the other thing is finding that coach, that mentor, that ally. They're out there. There's a lot of people that want to help. Find them. I find that women in women events and sponsorships, you can't even try not to. As soon as you express some vulnerability about what your gaps are, 10, 15 women are going to jump to your aid. That's been my personal experience watching women do it for other women, which is wonderful and fascinating. But I also think you're going to require allyship in different ways. And so be intentional about reaching out. Find those one or two people that are going to help you. Sometimes it's when you don't have that courage and you don't have that ability to take that next step, you need somebody to push you to take that next step. So, Myrna, what do you think? I can't like to have the courage to tell you what I think, but if somebody asks me, I'm going to be a lot more inclined to do that, right? So, recognize your own biases, recognize your own imposter syndromes, and then start asking for help when you need somebody to just nudge you along a little bit.
Yeah, that's so good, and that's a point that I'm going to be making at the conference. Is that sometimes we think that that's a sign of weakness, asking for help, but it's so powerful. And then I think that a lot of times, especially agency owners, we feel very isolated and alone because we're holding up all the pieces and everything for everyone else. So the power of just being in a room or finding a coach or a mentor and you speaking what your challenge points are, and then they're like, oh yeah, that's me too. And then instantly you find that there's this some sort of support and you're not alone. And I feel like that starts shifting everything. So such good points. Okay, so last question, for all the ladies that are attending Summit that are hearing this, what is one piece of just a leadership message that I could leave with them today?
The growth mindset is something that is absolutely critical for success. I mean, I talked about how I see it in myself. I look for it in other leaders. I look for it in other people that are up and coming and stepping into leadership roles. So if you have not looked at growth mindset training in a while, I would encourage you to go out there and do it again. Another one you could chat GPT real quick, and it's going to give you some metric to kind of test yourself on. Do you have a growth mindset? I think that curiosity, listening more than speaking, is all these things are just so critical to just learning every single day. I've done this for 41 years. I'm 61 years old. I learn something new every day. And when that stops, then I stop because it just doesn't make any sense for me anymore. But until that stops, I'm just having a lot of fun doing it. And I feel like I'm bringing others along for the journey. So that would be my advice.
Do you have any great books or audibles that you love listening to around this topic?
Man, so I'm reading a book right now, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm not finished with it, but so far I've been just overwhelmed by it. And it is What to Make of a Life by Jim Collins, and he wrote Good to Great, which if you're as old as I am, you remember that was sort of our little Bible back in the day. But it talks about work that you're coded for. It's not like purposeful work. Yes, purposeful work is important, but what are you actually coded for? I love that because I think the people that are most successful, wildly successful, is when they find work that feels like this is what I was meant to do. This is what I was coded for. And it's a great book. I've been super fascinated by the shift in mindset and just thinking like, oh, I just find that to be purposeful work. Yeah, you can find that to be purposeful work, but is it what you are meant to do? What you are like built to do? And so I think that's a great book. It kind of speaks to like the difference to use his verbiage, good to great. You can be good at something, but how am I great at it? Well, is it what I was wired to do?
Oh, such a good thing to end on. So I just want to thank you again. Thank you for your time and for your advice and your confirmation that we are getting somewhere in this industry, and we are making change, and you are a big part of that. So thank you for all of the work that you do and for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.